Hey, welcome to a very special episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. We're on location at the moment because you might have noticed there hasn't been an episode for a while. That's because both Kyle and myself have been absolutely swamped with films, and we've also had some film festivals in the middle there as well. So that's why there's no music today, and that's why you're going to hear some background noises, because we're about to head to a screening at IMAX, and we're just outside in the parks and gardens enjoying nature.
Right.
But to start off, I'm Dave G, and joining me is my co-host.
Hello everybody, I'm Kyle.
So over the next couple of weeks, or perhaps even a month, we're going to take a look at some of the movies that we've missed over the last couple of months as well. And today we're going to take a look at a brand new Australian film that is still out in some cinemas, but it will be coming to streaming platforms very, very soon, called Girl at the Window. And this is kind of a special film because it's directed by Mark Hartley, who a lot of you will know put together the documentary Not Quite Hollywood a few years ago, and has a bit of an obsession with Ozploitation films. And this is the latest kind of Ozploitation film from him. Now, it centers around a young girl named Susan, played by Lauren Goetz, who is moved to the country with her mother, played by Radha Mitchell, and something doesn't quite sit right with her. She's there's been a serial killer on the loose, and now she believes the serial killer is their next door neighbor, played by Vince Colosimo, someone who her mother is now dating, which is a little bit alarming. So Kyle, I know you like your Ozploitation movies. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, as you say, I'm quite a fan of that kind of subgenre, or that resurgence in the Ozploitation stuff that's been coming out lately. And yeah, like, who else would know how to handle movies like that, or what the allure of those kind of films are, more than Hartley, being that he directed Not Quite Hollywood, and not only that, like, not only is Not Quite Hollywood pretty much chiefly responsible for the resurgence in looking back at those kind of movies from that time, but Mark Hartley, he's directed a whole lot of making of and retrospective documentaries that are on the DVDs for, like, these re-releases of these old classic Australian movies. This movie, I enjoyed it. It was kind of like an interesting thing, seeing like the kind of like a very much a Rear Window, or the Shia LaBeouf movie Suburbia. That was it, Suburbia. Yeah, kind of the same kind of story like that, where like this young girl is almost convinced that there's a serial killer living next door to her, and yeah, just the story that builds from that. I liked it, but I did think at some points it really did get quite a bit too cheesy for me. I think sometimes there was a clash between the comedic elements and the horror. I think it was really good when it was a horror, and there's other times that I think that the acting in it was a little bit just a little bit subpar in some parts, but then on other parts it was a lot better. But what did you think of it, David? What did you think?
Yeah, I found the same. But I couldn't work out whether Mark was deliberately trying to make some parts too cheesy, almost as a homage to that Ozploitation genre. I mean, I love some of the early Ozploitation stuff, and some of the stuff that was around when I was a kid, like Houseboat of Horror, where that movie has some really cheesy parts in it, and you still don't know to this day whether they meant for it to be cheesy or whether it just turned out to be cheesy. And even films like Cut, that didn't try to be cheesy, there are some cheesy parts in that film. So I wasn't 100% sure whether Mark was deliberately doing that, especially when he was making some of the characters, like the detectives, so cliched. Like, I wasn't 100% sure whether that was part of his homage, because a lot of the detectives in the early Ozploitation films were cliched. Like, even I went back recently and watched Mad Max, and some of the characters in the first Mad Max are horribly cliched.
The chief of police character.
Yeah. So I wasn't 100% sure whether he deliberately did that, because then some of the scenes, especially between Lauren Goetz and Ella Newton, were more like what we came to expect from movies like Somersault in Australian cinema, where it's a kind of touchy-feely kind of dramatic sense between two characters at high school. I'm trying to think of the other one. I think it was 317, the movie that was set in Perth at a school where there's been a suicide. Again, that film was a lot like that as well, where there was more kind of serious scenes between the teenagers, and I kind of got the feeling that Mark was trying to do that with his film as well.
Exactly like you're saying. Like, it feels like it must have been on purpose in some way, because Jamie Blanks was actually the composer on this film. And Jamie Blanks is probably better known as the director of Urban Legend and Valentine. Those are like early 2000 cult horror classics.
And Storm Warning, one of my favorite exploitation films.
So like, he's somebody that he knows the genre, he knows the horror genre, he knows what he's doing. And the score of this movie there were some parts where it was very kind of upbeat and poppy. And so I guess you're right, like it did feel like maybe it was kind of on purpose. It was trying to be that kind of a bit lighthearted on purpose. I guess just it's up to personal taste whether it succeeded or not. I think it was also it also has to do with the both of the film's writers, Terrence Hammond and Nicolette Minster. They're more experienced with comedic writing, so like they've got kind of a limited filmography, but they're both more experienced with comedic more than the actual horror. So yeah, I think that definitely led to it. I think definitely the best two actors in it, or by far, would be Vince Colosimo and Radha Mitchell. There's some parts in it where even Vince Colosimo comes off a little bit like he's having a bit of a laugh with it, which I can understand. Like he's playing, I'm a next door neighbor serial killer, and but Radha Mitchell, there's actually some parts in it where I felt like she was actually a better actor than the movie allowed her to be. Like there's certain parts where when I was watching it, it was like, she's definitely the best actress in this entire film, and it's almost like she was maybe being held back a little bit by it, but it was still an enjoyable movie all the same.
Yeah, like there's some really sinister parts in this. I mean, it sounds like we're almost saying that it's a parody film, but it's definitely not. Like there's some great kills in this film. I know I sound like a sicko saying that, but it's not one of those films where it's got like the comical murders like a Scary Movie or something like that. Like a few of the murders here are pretty full on, and there's nudity in the film as well, which was a bit of a surprise because they are schoolgirls. Some of the characters that get nude in this, so it is a real throwback to those 1980s and 1970s exploitation movies where kind of nothing was taboo. But I think the bit that really worked for me with this was the story. Like, I did find myself trying to work out whether there was going to be a twist or whether it was supposed to be overt who the killer was, and we're not going to ruin it and say anything about that. But I think that was the parts of the film that worked. And like, I had a little bit of a chuckle at how cliched the detective was and things like that. But there was other parts of this movie that really, really drew me in. So it's kind of different in that aspect where it's kind of skirting on the comedic, but also having some serious moments in there as well.
Yeah, like the killer in the film is known as the Clockwork Killer because of the space that is between when they kidnap somebody to when they kill somebody and when the authorities find the body. It's down to clockwork. This happens on the first day, this happens on the second day, and there's times in the movie where you are following the Clockwork Killer and their path of destruction, and as you say, that gore stuff, that was more effective. I did really like that, and yeah, when the as you say, like it sounds really bad to say, but yeah, the nudity in the movie, like right from the beginning, it's one of the first things that you see in the movie is nudity, and I actually was thinking, yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen a horror movie that actually had breasts in it.
Yeah.
Which definitely, like from the beginning, made me think, yeah, exploitation. It definitely went back to that feeling. So it's definitely a movie for people of that, who are fans of those all kind of cheesy horror films.
Yeah, and Vince Colosimo is kind of perfect for a role like this as well, because of course we all know him from Underbelly, where he played Alphonse Gangitano, which is kind of weird because we're only a couple of blocks away from where he was king at the moment, as a helicopter goes over the top. But also we also know him for like the Wog Boy and stuff like that as well. So he's kind of had a history of mixing comedy and kind of thriller suspense with his roles. So it kind of comes across really well in that role, and I kind of liked his character, which I know you shouldn't say that, but I kind of liked his character in this. But I think this is one of those movies where it's the young stars that really do shine as well, and there's almost like a puberty blues kind of feel to this movie as well, with a body count. So yeah,
that's Vince Colosimo. I did like him in the movie because he definitely he has that he has like a creepy air about him, but also at the same time he has that charisma of the natural charisma of just the bloke next door. That is why the main character's mother would actually be interested in him going out on dates with the bloke, because he actually is kind of a likable guy. But yeah, when you see him through Sam's eyes, he actually is a little bit more creepy and like at the same time. So and yeah, you're right. It kind of has that puberty blues kind of thing to it. The way just how almost at times she was a little bit blasé about the fact that she thought that there was a serial killer living next door to her. So, yeah. I mean, it definitely had that kind of a teen movie element to it, but with killings and nudity.
Yeah. and it kind of ties in well as well, because they've got a backstory with her that we didn't mention before, where she witnessed her father's death and kind of blames herself for it. So when she first comes out with these stories of I think the Clockwork Killer lives next door, everyone's kind of like, oh no, she's off her meds again, kind of thing, which adds to it, because you know that no one's going to believe her. So what did you think of the younger performers in this one?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I did think that some of those younger actors were where the weaker side of the acting was from, especially up against like in the same scenes as Radha Mitchell. They weren't on par with it, which was a pity, because like recently we also watched Blaze, and that was a movie with a very young cast, and there was amazing young actors in that, whereas here they were a lot more hokey. They were a lot more kind of high school theater production performances, which is again what makes me feel like maybe this movie was, I hate to say bad on purpose, but at least cheesy on purpose.
Yeah. They reminded me of some of the acting in Cut, like I said before. Like, there's a couple of characters in Cut where you kind of get the feeling that the director went, you know what, I don't want you to put an A game in here. I want you to kind of be the, like, this is going to sound really bad, but like the kind of whorish character that like everyone's going to expect to get killed because you're not that John Carpenter virtue kind of female character. So you kind of get the feeling that that's set up in this. Like, I think especially one of the characters of this is set up to be that kind of I'll sleep with anybody kind of character, because you then expect that she's going to become a victim during the film, and that's something that of course was a big exploitation thing as well, and a very big B and C grade horror trope as well, where it's the girl that throws herself around that kind of is always going to end up a victim. So I think if you're going to go into this movie and expecting a work of art, you're not going to get that. This really is a movie to me that pays homage to that Ozploitation on that B and C grade, even D grade horror genre.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, as you said, I believe one of the last major feature films that the director of this made, that Mark Hartley made, was a remake of what was it? It was a remake of Patrick.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know that definitely had the same kind of a feel to it. That, like, you're going into a movie like that, you've got to be open to that kind of the lesser side of horror film. It's not you're not going for a Silence of the Lambs kind of movie.
Yeah. So I guess to wrap up, what are you going to give this one out of 5?
I'm going to give this 2 out of 5. I didn't hate it, but I thought that it, I guess, I felt I was a little bit let down by some of the acting in it, and I don't know, I did find parts of the plot to be a little bit too predictable, and there was only, I guess it wasn't funny enough to me for me to kind of pass it off as so much of an homage to that style of film. It was kind of in the same way that as a duck almost hit me in the head there. in the same way that Tarantino's Death Proof was. It was a homage to those kind of the car driving kind of films, but I still found it wasn't enjoyable enough even as that. So yeah, I'm going to give it 2 out of 5 for me.
I'm going to give it 3 out of 5. I think I had a little bit more fun with it. I did like the more suspenseful moments of it, and I kind of liked that over-the-top style that was in some of the scenes. So yeah, I think it's, like I said, it's one of those movies where if you're going to go in and expect the next Somersault or something like that, you're not going to get that. You've got to go into this expecting to see a kind of a trashy, pulpy kind of film. So I am going to give Girl at the Window 3 out of 5. Kyle gave it 2 out of 5. Go along, check it out, see what you think. But for now, I've been Dave G.
And I've been Kyle.
And we're both on location.
Yeah.